Don't worry about the camera, because we can do a lot of editing, and you want to go back and repeat it, you can certainly do that. If, we sort of hem and haw at the beginning, we'll cut all of that out and go right to the person who begins speaking. If someone finishes answering the question, but you have another comment that you'd like to make, feel free to do that, and we'll move the camera to you. So essentially, we're going to try to focus on the person who's speaking, with a close-up.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll pull back and then go to someone else who's speaking, and that sort of thing. Now, they should look, where should they look? They should look at me?
Look at you.
Okay, so I'll,
Like 1 second between who you tell you're going to, like who you call out, so then I can focus on them before they start speaking. That would be great.
okay.
Want them to raise their hand or something?
What, are you choosing them, or are they raising hands?
I'll try to maybe start with the first person, go to the second, but the best thing to do would be to get
Names.
the names. Your name is?
Yvonne.
Pardon me?
Yvonne, Y-V-O-N-N-E.
Y-V-O-N-N-E. And your last name?
Surowicz, S-U-R-O-W-I-E-C.
I-E-C. And Yvonne, what do you teach?
Language arts.
Jay, just to facilitate even faster, if you could give first names,
Okay.
I'll do everything else. So
Oh, okay, great.
Perfect.
So
Peter's
Yvonne,
next.
Peter,
Christine? Susan?
Susan. Okay, good. So let's start. Maybe we can start with Christine, because you seem to.
And she didn't even know.
I just want to know, because I work with the autistic children, so this car model is a little,
Okay.
You'll be fine.
okay.
All right. Okay, let me start there, Christine. How do you think implementing the car model will benefit your school?
Well, I feel that we have to set up for the priorities for learning. It's curriculum-based, so each student needs to meet their needs, and working together as a group and sharing ideas. I think it would be wonderful because each student learns at a different pace. Each student learns in a different way. And it provides the school climate that we need to make sure that everybody's meeting their expectations and their
And
needs.
you're working with autistic children.
Yes.
How can this be applied directly to those students?
Each of my students work at a totally different level, so the needs need to be met, but it's going to be differentiated in many different ways.
I know, Susan, you had a math class. How has the information you've received and the training you've received from CAR help you with math, which is often a difficult subject with students?
Well, in particular with math, with the CAR model, I was chosen to be on the curriculum writing team because prior to that we didn't really have an established curriculum. We just went by the standards. Now we have a curriculum that's a living document that is undergoing revisions constantly because we are following the CAR model, and we are revising based on student needs, revising based on the data that we're getting. Everything is now very data driven. So that's helped us a lot, me in particular with math, because we do focused formative assessments, and your formative assessments, you assess and find out your data, do your interventions, your targeted interventions, and then from there, by the time your students get to their summative assessment, any problems that you've had have been remediated. So I personally, myself, have seen a tremendous growth in the student achievement with the CAR model.
Oh, that's terrific.
Could I possibly?
Yeah, Peter?
Talking about data, not only does it help us, but I think it also helps the students. I think when they are aware of what they're doing and how they're being assessed, I think they become better at being students. I think the learning gets ratcheted up a little bit when they know what they're accountable for and how they're being assessed, and they get to keep a running chart of, okay, I got this today, and I got a 90 the last time, so I know exactly where I stand in Mr. Verga's class. It's never, Mr. V, am I passing? I don't hear that, because with the data, when we share it with the children, they know where they're at. So not only does it help us, but it helps our students become more engaged in being learners.
Good.
Can I add to that?
Yes.
I just wanted to, along with what they said, is with the cross-curricular activities, now with the set curriculum, teachers are able to collaborate in their PLCs and create those cross-curricular activities that the students need.
And that's very important in language arts because the new standards have other kind of informational texts, social studies and science in the standard. So kids need to know that as well. Can you say something like that? Let me phrase the question. With the the new Common Core standards, how does integrating other curriculum into language arts benefit the students?
Well, now I can set up my lesson plans where I can incorporate those Common Core standards and show them how language arts can relate to social studies and mathematics and any other subject area.
And,
Good.
want to go Chris?
As far as my students, because I do have several students that are pulled out into a mainstream class.
And could you mention the word autistic so that people can know that your
Oh,
students
sure.
are autistic?
Okay, so the students with autism, I do have, and let me add that I also have multiple disabled children in my classroom as well. And several of them are pulled out throughout the day to be mainstreamed. And from what they gain through the mainstream classes, like math and language arts, they bring in back into the classroom when I teach, say, social studies and science. And what they've learned, because they spend the double period in math class, they can bring into my classroom and use those examples, say, in science. And they can help teach their peers as well and help them out, which is a great thing, because there may be something that I'm not addressing to them that they can, they come in what they've learned in a double math period, which is a great thing.
Mhm.
Yvonne had spoken about collaborating, and we had just spoken, I guess last week, I gave you the book, Witches of Blackbird Pond. And in social studies, I really don't have time, most of the time, to do the backstory.
Mhm.
I deal with the standards, how does religion evolve, and how did it work in starting the colonies. And if I get to Yvonne and she can do Witches of Blackbird Pond, which talks about how the Puritans would take newcomers, and all the newcomers were being pointed out as witches because they wanted they wanted the norms to stay just the way they were. They didn't want any new ideas coming into their community. And if they hear it from me, and then they read it in Yvonne's class, then all we're doing is reinforcing it for them, and it becomes more real to them. They get more exposure to what we're trying to talk about, and we've had a lot more time to do that. We've been able to communicate with one another. We've been able to collaborate, and we've had time to sit down and say, okay, this is what we would like to do. We would like you to change your reading assignments so they more fit in with social studies, science. So now they're reading text, and they're also getting it in my classroom out of a book or off the internet.
Right. The collaborative part of the car is critical. Can you talk a little bit about that? I think you gave an excellent summary of the need to collaborate. Anything that you're doing with other teachers, since language arts is such an important subject?
Well, this year we did the formative and summative assessment, so I was able to do my color-coded chart where the other teachers were able to see where my students are struggling and possibly are they struggling in a similar area in their subject area. Or it may be different, but we can see which students are maybe struggling only in language arts or across the entire board. So I think those formative assessments and summative assessments really helped us with helping each student with their individual needs.
Terrific.
And it really did help us with targeted interventions because we could target specific needs that we've seen. For example, Yvonne would present data on some type of assessment that they were given with informational text. And then we say, well, this student XYZ, we noticed that this student is struggling with this consistently. Is this student also struggling with this in social studies? Is this student struggling with this in science? Oh, in math, I noticed that this student, when we have a problem that has more verbiage to it, is also struggling. Maybe it's more of a reading than a mathematical problem. And I think that the CAR model has helped us because we do have the PLCs, the professional learning communities, and we have learned, our team in particular has really kind of congealed and meshed very well and are all on the same path with the students.
Terrific. One of the core parts of the training is unpacking the standards. Talk a little bit about that process and what you learned from it, unpacking the standards.
Well, I, in particular, for the math and
You
also...
start again, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry,
I was moving the camera.
Oh,
I'm sorry,
okay.
thanks.
I, in particular, unpack the standards for the math and for the science also. And in looking and unpacking the standards, you are able to clearly articulate exactly what the learning expectations are. And then we articulated it in student-friendly terms. So not only is the teacher aware of what the expectation is, but now the students are aware of what the expectation is. And it also clarified exactly what you needed to teach. And then from unpacking the standards, we aligned the assessments to the standards. And then from the assessment, then you did your learning strategies and your instructional methods and things that you were going to teach in the class, as opposed to picking your activity, your instructional activity, and then aligning your assessment to that. We actually aligned it to the standard, the assessment to the standard, the instructional activities to the actual assessment and standards. And I personally think that hopefully we'll see the benefit of that in our test scores this particular year.
How would that work in a special education class?
Sorry,
And take all your time, the time you need.
I have to go get a drink.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh,
I
there's.
got like,
Are you cutting?
Yeah, I'll be cutting that out, don't worry
Okay.
about it.
sorry.
No problem.
Take your
It's
time.
a beautiful pink.
No, you-
Got some rosy cheeks.
I have a,
I know. A frog
Sorry.
in your throat.
okay. Thank you. Okay,
So, unpacking the standards, how does that work in a class that you're dealing with special education students?
unpacking, well, the standards with special education, with the autistic population, I do follow the curriculum for 7th and 8th grade. But I don't follow it to the extent that the mainstream classes are following it at, because my students, what the students outside in the mainstream classes do in, say, a week, it may take me a month. I will pick bits and pieces of the curriculum and the lessons, and I will teach it to them very modified ways. I don't know if I'm answering this correctly, sorry.
You are.
But I'm trying to follow, when you say unpacking it, I'm trying to follow the curriculum as best as I can to meet the students' needs. I want to teach them at the same level that everyone else is being taught at, but just at a much easier level. And if they retain just a small part of it, then I feel like I've done something, because
Good. Peter, the focus of unpacking, of course, is on the Common Core to a certain extent. How does unpacking the standards help you in your social studies program?
Well, I believe it gives me a much better understanding of the standards. I try to think of it as if I was an electrician and I was building a house and I was putting wiring in the house, I would have to know the building codes.
Mhm.
I'm not going to be an electrician and come in and not know building codes. And I think by unpacking our standards and writing our curriculum, it gave me a much better understanding of what it is I need to impart to my students, whether it's skill-based or knowledge-based. And what I found while I was doing it was I depend a lot on essential questions. I think if the children know going in that these are the questions they need to be able to answer, and in the beginning they're very broad, and then we get to narrow them. And I think by unpacking our standards, that I've paid a lot more attention to how am I going to get all of my students, not just that 80%, teach to the middle, how am I getting all of my students to understand these broad questions? And I did that by making the broader questions much more narrow and scaffolding it so that we all got to that big essential question of the unit or of the chapter. And I think that has helped me, and I hope it has helped my students.
Good. That's always the important things. The units of study part of the model, the information about creating units of study. How has that been working in language arts?
Right now we have 4 units of study. They are divided into marking periods, and we're currently still revising. However, we are starting to create the assessments so they're across the board the same. So next year when we do present, we are able to see how our students are doing, so we know that they are where they're supposed to be by the time NJ Ask comes, and they will be able to hopefully succeed on that exam.
Right. And are the units of study, do you focus on that in your professional learning community? Is the PLC the place where that work is facilitated?
Well, when we did work in our PLCs, we worked with there's 2 language arts teachers. So I would work with my language arts, the other language arts teacher on the language arts curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I could just interject that we, in our PLCs, would get together to plan, okay, I'm going over populations and sampling and stuff like that. Okay, on science, they're learning about overpopulation and problems like that. So we made the natural cross-curricular connections, which really connected it for the students, and it became more real life to them that, okay, now I'm learning about populations and it has nothing to do. And then Mr. Berger in social studies said, oh, well, populations, and we were able to quickly connect things that normally before the CAR model I would have taught populations, Mr. Berger would have done populations, Ms. Schaub, but now we did it in a connected way for the students.
Mm-hmm. Excellent, that's very good. Let's switch a minute to formative assessments. I know you talked a little bit about that before. How has the use of formative assessments improved student learning, do you think? How has formative assessments improved student learning? Do you want to take a stand at that?
Yes, in social studies, the standards are very broad, they're very deep, and they're very wide. And by formative assessing my students, I get to break it up into small pieces for them. I can get this very big concept and sit down and say, oh, wow, when they got together, they wrote this for themselves, it seemed. I got to teach this to a 7th grade student. How am I going to get this big concept so all of my students get it? And by using formative assessments, I get to scaffold it much better. And knowing what they are before I teach it has been a huge benefit, because now working backwards, working from the assessment to the skill and knowledge, that I can sit down and say I can take a very huge, broad topic, a huge concept of how freedom was shared by Native American peoples, African American peoples, rich white people in colonial America, how this was different for these groups. And it's a huge concept unless you break it down into smaller concepts. And that's what the formative assessments, by looking at it, saying, okay, I can break this big concept down by doing this first, and then assessing that, and then by teaching them this and having it assessed this way, that the bigger concept wasn't so big for the kids. And I go back to the essential question again. I can take that huge essential question and make it into smaller questions. And then once we've moved from that one, we move on to the next. before you know it, we have answered the larger essential questions. So I think that has helped
Oh,
the
okay.
students greatly.
Terrific. Let's switch a minute and talk about teacher evaluation. Mr. Felice has talked about the Danielson model being implemented. How do you think this process and the way you're now working will, fits in with the process or assist you in the process of teacher evaluation?
Well, in particular with Charlotte Danielson, we are being held accountable for student learning. And with the formative assessments and the summative assessments and the CAR model, you're able to, within your curriculum, and we have it there as a map, and with all the data and the assessing and the response to intervention, you see the immediate growth in the students. You see where you needed to do the targeted interventions, and you can immediately do the interventions right there. So I think that it is the perfect connection to the Charlotte Danielson model for teacher evaluation, because we are accountable, we should be accountable, and this gives your accountability tool right there, and it does increase student learning. I mean, I've seen it myself in the math. It definitely increases the student achievement.
Good.
When we have our team meetings, we debrief, we go through, okay, we taught this lesson, how did it go? And we evaluate when we meet together as a group. And we'll sit down and say, well, I taught it this way, and it went really well until fifth period, and then fifth period it blew up. And why do you think it blew up? And then Susan would say, well, in my class, if I did it this way, I found that this also happened. And so I think we used to call it, I called it debriefing. We would sit down and say, okay, this is what we're going to do at the end of the day. We're going to talk about what worked, what didn't work, why it worked, why it didn't work. And I think when we do that in a learning community, then I think we become better. And when we are going to be evaluated, well, that's just another step, because we've evaluated ourselves in our own meetings. So why not be evaluated?
Excellent.
Can I add?
Yeah.
When you're being held accounted for, you want to do your best and beyond, and you don't want to fail. So you're going to do everything you need to do your best, and working as a group, because nobody wants to fail at that.
And just one more thing, I believe it sets higher expectations for both the teacher and the students.
Absolutely.
And we've been able to, in our PLCs, build on each other's strengths to build up others' weaknesses, where I may be strong in data and Christine may be strong in differentiation, so she's helped me differentiate and I've helped her with the data, and we're kind of building and raising ourselves up through this.
Wow, that's terrific. What was the most challenging thing about implementing this model? Most
I
challenging?
never went to a workshop, so my team sort of taught me on the fly about the CAR method. So I would say not going to a formal training might have made it a little bit more difficult, but again, because we speak about it in our team meetings and we share. I mean, like when I first started teaching, sharing wasn't something teachers did. They stayed in their little acre, and that was that. And what I did and it worked, it worked. But now sharing what works and talking about what might not work, I think has made everybody better. So I think not going to a training might have been difficult.
Any challenges?
And I think getting the teachers all to buy in, because in the beginning now, during your prep period, you have these professional learning community meetings, and it's like, well, how come I'm missing my prep? I have this to do, I have that to do. But in the end, it turns out to be less work for us, because many hands make work lighter. And I think in the beginning, getting past that roadblock, so to speak, and having everybody understand exactly what it was, and with the curriculum, and going through the revision process and seeing how much it really does help to have that curriculum, to have that guide, to have that map, to help you drive instruction and have your data and everything. Once the people realized and saw the results, I think the buy-in was a lot a lot better.
That's great.
I also feel, some of the veteran teachers may not want to share their idea, some teachers have their set ways, and I think it's really important. Our team was a great team. We would collaborate our ideas and everything, but there are some veteran teachers, and maybe even some new, that are set in their ways, and that can make it very difficult, so.
Think of the most significant thing, and I'll ask each of you. What is the most significant thing that you could tell us and the other schools that might be thinking of implementing this about how this has changed your school? What's the most significant thing? And hopefully we'll get.
I believe expectations are much higher, and I believe that we could always ramp up the expectations. I think the learning has gone on to a higher degree, and yet I think we can continually ramp it up. I think that expectations for teachers, expectations for students, expectations for parents, expectations for all stakeholders can just keep being raised. And I think that is a great thing about it, that you're never going to get there. It's always going to be, okay, we're here, but we can be here. And I think that is something that I see in this.
Great, thank you.
I also see a shared mission, that we now have a shared mission as a building, as a learning community, and that we're working together to share and model best practices within our own professional learning communities per team, and then per grade level, and then also vertically. And I think that that definitely has been one of the biggest benefits that we have, that everybody's kind of on the same page with the same high expectations.
That's terrific. Can you think of something, Christine?
Just building a positive school environment. I have learned a lot through my coworkers. I teach all 4 subjects, so I always come to them, what are you working on? I'll modify it somehow to work with my children, the multiple disabled, the autistic children, but not at the level that they're teaching it, but I will use what they are teaching to best suit my students.
That's terrific. Yvonne, how about for you, most significant thing?
The most significant thing was the collaboration with the team, where I was able to see the different assessments that they have given their students, and I have those same students, and seeing their progress and achievement in other classes, and what else I can do to help them improve in the language arts department.
Terrific. Well, that's it, guys. You did a fabulous job. Applause. I've talked to a lot of schools that are implementing this. You guys really have it down pat and know what you're doing and can explain it. So I think a terrific job. Thank you so much for doing this.
I'll just say start in the beginning of the sentence, restart that sentence or whatever.
You'll appear at your best.
Okay.
Okay.
I know a little bit about video editing.
Good.
Start whenever you're ready.
Okay. I'm going to ask you a couple of basic questions. Feel free to go on and on.
Okay.
And then, we can have a bit of a dialogue. I am not going to be heard on the tape or seen. This is all you. Okay?
Okay.
So we'll take the very best parts.
All right.
Josh, talk about the model, the CAR model, and what it is meant for your school.
The CAR model has really changed the structure of Grace Wilday from an academic and even environmental perspective, because it has addressed areas of curriculum, instruction, assessment, and even PLCs, and how we move to change instruction.
Mm-hmm. And could you tell us a little bit about the change? What was before the change and then the change?
Since we have
I'm sorry.
accepted...
Look at Jay.
Oh,
Yeah,
no matter
I'm
what?
sorry, I
Okay.
didn't tell you that. That's my
okay.
bad.
Since we have accepted the CAR model, we have changed the school from, and as far as curriculum, which there was none. It was a bunch of documents that were in the shelf in the principal's office from 1998, and dust collected. The car model has provided us an actual workable document, livable document that allows us to see the activities, the expectations in units, and then we're designing those units to focus on some of the assessment tasks which are aligned to the standards, and ultimately that's the way we're ensuring that all the instruction and curriculum is aligned to the standards. And in the area of assessment, because we have translated student learning objectives, the objectives are student oriented to ensure that teachers are gearing the expectations to the students and they're aware of those expectations, and we assign each assessment or form assessments according to those learning objectives, and that's how we assess it according to a form assessment data tool which is done in Excel. In the area of culture, which works with our PLCs, the tool has allowed us to, again, create the curriculum in our PLCs, look at data within our PLCs, and have the PLCs utilize both those tools to drive instruction by asking questions. The conversations are more around teaching and learning, cross-curricular connections, because now, it's at each grade level we have science, social studies, math, language arts, even other special areas that all input the information, so the cross-curricular connections, so we can see the overlapping of content from one subject area to the next.
Wow. Your car training for the staff occurred when? Shortly after you came on?
The initial training actually occurred in September, and actually did another training in May.
September of this year.
September of this year, 2011, and then I did another training in May of this year, 2012.
So since the training, which was a short time ago, you've seen this change.
That is correct.
Okay. What would you say is the most significant change that has occurred since implementing the car?
The direction of the PLCs working together, looking at the data, the leadership now, because there's more of a continuity from one subject area to the next. We're utilizing one unified tool, even from one grade level to the next as far as vertically. The conversations are more structured and focused because it's not one team looking at maybe a lesson plan, one format, another format. You see the expectations, you see the scaffolding of expectations from one grade level to the next. They're even now discussing the vertical articulation from one grade level to the next.
What's the most useful part of the model, do you find?
The ease of translating the learning objective from the standards into the student age-appropriate expectation. That is the easiest thing, because it now drives the expectations from the activities and even the assessment, so the teachers as well as anyone coming off the street can actually understand.
So that's part of the unpacking of the standards?
That is correct. This is dealing more with, and it also, to me, helps the teachers become more adept at the science of teaching, which many people do have an issue with.
What's the most challenging thing implementing the car?
The summative assessment tasks. If many people are not adept in unpacking the standards, knowing the science behind teaching, it's difficult for them to be able to translate into the summative assessment tasks that are rigorous and challenging for the students to be able to ensure that they achieve those expectations. Because they had been so used to creating the assessment first and aligning the expectations to the assessment. Now this is the reverse and the backwards planning.
And how do you help teachers facilitate that?
By looking at their by looking at their curriculum units, looking at the objectives that is expected by that grade level according to the specific unit, and looking at their summer assessment tasks. I'm constantly reviewing their assessment tool, their units, on a monthly basis. In addition to that, the teachers also provide me with feedback through revisions at what worked, what didn't work, what needs to be revised in the unit, as well as some summative assessment tasks, because what we've developed is a beginning of a template or some sort of framework. And as we know, if it's a living document, initial things may not work as well. And as you fine tune it, you find areas that we need to improve, and we found some areas that we need to improve. But it's also helping teachers become better, better teachers of their craft as a result of that.
How has the model impacted on you as the leader? How has it maybe changed your leadership style a bit, if it has?
It has allowed me to know, the CAR model has allowed me to be more knowledgeable about what is being taught in my school. Being able to look at the curriculum units on a monthly basis in all the areas and assuring that students are learning the concepts according to the standards at the end of each unit, because I'm observing all the formative assessments over time to the summative assessment tasks, and I'm observing how the students perform at each level. Let's say, for example, 5 different learning objectives in one unit, and then the summative assessment task. Let's say a student didn't perform well in the formatives and then didn't advance proficient in the summative. That now allows me to ask the questions, what is going on with the teaching now? This is now the art of teaching. So I'm more aware of how the teachers are performing with the art as well as the science. So I have better practitioners in the school. In the form of curriculum, I know my teachers, I'm making sure that the teachers are covering the standards from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, because now they're assigned in units, where in the past, again, is creating lesson plans with the activities first, aligning it to the task, and then trying to connect the standards well after the fact, which is too late.
Wow. This is a busy time for a school leader. There are a lot of educational reforms. The Common Core standards, the core curriculum, new assessment systems, a new teacher evaluation system, new principal evaluation system. Does the CAR help you put that in perspective and how to focus attention both for you and for your instructional staff?
Repeat that again.
Think of all of the reforms. One of the purposes of the CAR is to build a coherent plan at the school, so that you don't look at the Common Core, the assessment, the teacher evaluation as separate initiatives. The CAR helps you to try to look at it as a cohesive whole, and the process of the CAR helps you to help teachers navigate all of this while you oversee it all. How has the model helped you in planning the work of all of these major reforms?
Although there are a lot of reforms, I believe the CAR allows me to oversee the whole process because everything to me is embedded within the process of developing the tool, the process in overseeing the tool and its movement from the development of curriculum, the execution of instruction, the analysis of the data, and then just the performance of the PLCs. And not just the Common Core, just all type of reforms. We're looking for teacher leadership, the effective instructional oversight of the principals or any leaders of instruction and curriculum, and ultimately for assessment. If I'm able to oversee how the students are performing over time, whether it be, again, from formative to summative, seeing how the teachers are going back to perform interventions, which is another way that I actually look at the assessment data. Students aren't performing, what are we doing to intervene? And the tool has provided me with that, and solely based on the actual learning objective. And I think we are ultimately addressing everything just within the process of the CARs provided for us, and even development of a mission and vision. Because we're all focused, so it's like lead principal and teacher effectiveness, the culture, curriculum, assessment, and PLCs all in one.
Excellent. Let me ask a question about the logistics of PLCs. How often are the teachers meeting to deal with all of this content?
Teachers meet 10 times a month in their team meetings, which we call the PLCs, to discuss the areas that I discussed with you, where there's a team leader, a secretary, which minutes are documented so we can actually see the effectiveness of it, and we have a binder that's created also so we can track the effectiveness of the teams. Teachers look at literature review, because let's say based on the data, maybe certain strategies when they are presenting to their teammates as far as how the students perform, there's a need for problem-solving techniques. And after presenting to the team actually realized what was executed with the teacher and realized there's assistance needed. That's when it actually drives the presentation for the next month, maybe more problem-solving strategies, open-ended type of questions within the formative assessments, maybe classroom management strategies. The instruction is being there, but maybe the students aren't getting it because of classroom management issues, and that's what helps to drive our literature review.
Oh, that's terrific. A lot of principals tell us that there isn't enough time in the schedule of teachers to have them meet so frequently to be able to do this important work. How have you managed to find that time? How does it work here?
To find the time for the teachers to meet in their PLCs, teachers have a prep every single day, a certain period. The 10 time that they meet was used from those periods.
Okay.
So they're having 10 less periods for prep. However, I believe that we're looking to constantly professionally develop our teachers, and that is a form of preparation, because you're meeting with your team. If we're looking for horizontal and vertical articulation, that is time to discuss that. You're looking for information as far as how students are doing from class to class. That's a form of preparation, so it can better guide the teachers in their development of instruction or delivery of instruction, not just for that day, but for the month, the year.
Terrific. How the teachers meet in grade level groups, or how do you arrange the meetings?
The teachers are arranged by teams, and within the teams there's a math, science, social studies, language arts, and depending special needs and other area teachers also.
Great. What can you tell us is the most significant thing about implementing this? What would you tell other school leaders if you could, have a minute to tell them why this is a good thing to implement in their schools? What's the most significant thing that has helped you as the principal here?
There's
Take
so
some
much. There's so much. The most significant thing that I would tell other principals in other schools about the CAR tool and the process is the ability to provide teachers a unified focus in the process of becoming a high-performing PLC and a high-performing school.
Very well said. Now, is there anything that you want to talk about or say that I haven't asked you a question about? 'Cause I think
We've
I think
covered
you've
everything.
covered pretty much everything. One final question. How do you see teacher evaluation fitting into this? How will teachers grow in order to be successful as they go through the new evaluation process? How is the CAR going to help them through that effort?
Because the CAR, we're moving into New Jersey, at least the park system, and for Roselle, we are going to be utilizing the Danielson model. In that, there's a student evaluation, student performance area section. As teachers are assessing the students throughout the year, via the state, we're making sure that we're issuing rigorous assessments through the summative assessments. And for example, what we're doing here at Grace Wilday is we're providing the students with actual open-ended assessments in all subject areas, as well as project labs, trying to incorporate all content areas. For example, there may be a response or a question about cells in maybe algebra or math. Right now, there's a PBL going in my grade 7. That's a project-based learning activity where they're learning about rainforests, and it's actually being instituted in the team. So you're seeing across science, math, language arts, and social studies, where you're seeing a correlation of expectations from one class to the next. And when the students are assessed, there's an embedding of writing, social studies, math, as well as language arts with the writing techniques. And with that, because the system or testing system in the future is actually looking to see students utilizing their knowledge in context and even nonfiction, we believe that the CAR has allowed us to do that.
Wow. Good. I think you've done. I think we have quite a bit.